Tobias Harris, and Tobias drills it! Sixers up one!
Embiid fakes, Embiid down the lane!
What is going on, guys, and welcome back to the Pick Swap Podcast. My name is Sean Barnard, as always, here with my esteemed partner, James Birrane. James, how are we doing today?
I'm doing well, man. Esteemed is a nice way to be introduced. I appreciate that.
Yeah, there we go. We got the holiday season. Got to kick things off on a high vibe here. Sixers had their 6-game winning streak snapped at the hands of the Chicago Bulls. The first test against a semi-real team. While the Bulls certainly have their problems and their issues and rumors, all those to go be attached to them. A huge upgrade over the Pistons and Wizards, who the Sixers were beating up on. A huge compliment and testament to the Sixers team to see them taking care of business and handling kind of the little fish in the pond. But I do think that we are all zeroed in on focusing on these bigger games ahead. We were recording this before the Timberwolves game. By the time this is out for you guys, this will be after, so you guys have a clue for what happened. But for this episode specifically, I want to talk a little bit about some bigger picture stuff, the state of the team, and the outlook for the season as far as production. So I want to kick things off in this episode right here. I want to talk some MVP, James. I know everybody's sick of the discourse, sick of the conversation that we have fought this battle all last year. But, James, if I had to ask you right now, who is your NBA MVP?
Sure, it's Joel. Of course, it's Joel. I'll put it this way, though, is I think last couple years we've had to battle for it, to say, like, hey, this is why, this is like, here's, you guys aren't seeing this or this, and, you're not watching on a nightly basis. So all these types of things, right? We're trying our best to defend him and prop him up. He's done it himself this year. He is the reigning MVP, so it almost feels like his title to lose, right? Like someone's gonna have to really outplay him in that degree. It's what's happened in the last, 3 MVPs have gone back to back, right? And then eventually some player comes through and plays a little bit better. And I think everyone kind of assumed that Embiid might take maybe not a step down, but have a different attack this year, but
Right.
He's been more calculated and more efficient and better just in general at everything. He's gotten better at offensive rebounding in general, passing. He's taken a clear step up. The defense has been intense and informed and on point since after the first maybe week or two. He started to step it up, and then the scoring, man, like he doesn't have to play fourth quarters very often anymore. Obviously, that was with the Pistons and Wizards. But when was the last time he scored less than 30? He's doing this.
I believe it's once all season, if I'm correct on it.
It's insane, dude, what he's doing as a scorer. Like he's going to be he's on pace right now, obviously still early, to lead the league in scoring for a third straight year, which hasn't been done since like the early 80s. Bob McAdoo did it. Like guys his size don't do this, right? So it's pretty unprecedented. He's been amazing. He's carrying a really strong Sixers team right now. And again, if you take him off this squad, they are not a very good team. So I think that plays a factor as well. But I don't feel like the argument is as intense right now from any side, which I think is a good thing. I think that is where the discourse should be.
Yeah, absolutely. And to fact check myself real quick, there have been 5 games this year that he scored under 30. His lowest scoring performance this year was against the Celtics, where he had 20 points. He has not scored below 20 in any games this season. I like a lot of what you said there. The only thing I want to push back on is I still think this is Jokic's crown to hold. Unfortunately, I think that the winning the championship and taking your team through those finals, answering those questions, that to me is more of a statement than MVP. And I especially feel that we're going to have to scrap and claw and fight this good battle if we want Joel MVP again, because that's what it took last year. And I do feel like everyone's feelings were a little hurt from his playoff performance, and especially the media people. That is the shadow of doubt that they have on Joel Embiid. That frankly, I think he could be doing what he's doing right now. I was going to put like a crazy player comparison, then I realized like Joel Embiid basically is that crazy player comparison. But he could do what he's doing right now for the length of the season And there's still going to be plenty of people that just say, I don't care. I want to see it in the playoffs. And that's kind of one of those things that Embiid obviously has to hold. I'm not going to fluff up or sugarcoat his playoff performances by any means, but it is a regular season award. And it is insane to think about. This is a guy who won MVP last year and is averaging more points, more rebounds, more assists, more blocks, and more steals in fewer minutes per game this season. And I especially think it's a testament to Joel, with the scoring efficiency and numbers going off, to be doing this without James Harden, because so much of those points were created by James Harden on the pick and roll, on the pick and pop, James Harden captaining the offense. While Tyrese Maxey is absolutely taking leaps and is filling the shoes of a guy running the offense, I wouldn't say he's creating looks for Embiid in the same way that Harden did. Like so many of those pocket passes, and now granted, Maxey has hit some sick pocket passes as well, but it just doesn't feel as much of Harden force feeding Embiid in the way that Maxey is. Like it felt like Harden was much more, I guess, a direct linear translation to a Harden pass to Joel Embiid basket. Feels like Embiid's getting on his own a little more this year, which you can look at that as both a positive and a weakness. There's a lot of hoop left to be played this year, which is why I think the race is still pretty tame. But I did just want to list off the odds at this current time. Once again, this is coming in before the Timberwolves game and before that slate of games. But I want to get what surprises you most out of this list, James. So to list off these odds coming from DraftKings, Nikola Jokic is the favorite at plus 250. Joel Embiid next up at plus 350. That recently changed. He did just hop Luka Doncic, who is third at plus 400. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander at plus 750. Giannis at 1,000. And Jason Tatum at plus 1,800 round out the top six. Are there any names in there that surprise you, or I guess the values, the distance, anything from that list that jumps out to you?
I can say this without being disrespectful. Like Tatum should be nowhere near that list. Like period. He's a fantastic player, but he is not the most valuable player in the league. Like let's be honest with that. If when we're talking about value, but aside from that, without throwing any shade, really, like it's fine. It seems about right. Like the league has tried to been forcing Luka into MVP conversations for the last 3 seasons, and he's fantastic. He's great. He is, but I think that Embiid and Jokic are kind of in a class of their own right now, and that's going to be the conversation. I know people get sick of it, like the voter fatigue, as they say, but I don't know. I mean, I think it's fine. I think that like it makes sense at this point. Shai is good, and they're playing really well in OKC. I think you could look at the top teams in either conference and kind of pick and point. I guess Minnesota probably the only one that doesn't have like an MVP caliber player on their team that's at the top of their conference, which is impressive for them. And we'll talk about them in a minute, but it makes sense. It all makes sense. I think Joel obviously is like on a night in, night out basis is proving a lot. Like I think the biggest point I was going to make after you pushed back was like, he went through a lot. Like they went through a lot this summer. They came into camp with a lot of question marks, and it didn't take him any time at all really to like just turn it on and figure it out and still be not only himself, but a better, more efficient, more focused version of himself, which has been really awesome to see. So they got a lot of games to play. They got a lot of good like teams to play. He obviously got a lot to, I don't want to say he padded his stats, but he definitely took advantage of the situation against some of these pretty bad teams. But even the Knights, dude, like against the Hornets, dude, he shot 78% from the field. Like they were like, we're not going to foul you. We're not going to 73. Yeah. Like, we're not going to let you get to the line. He was like, okay, I'll just shoot 18 of 23 from the field and I'll kill you. Mm-hmm. I'll kill you in 30 minutes or less. And that's really impressive. So we'll see. It's got a lot of time to play out, but this year's like quickly picking up speed. I guess that happens every year though.
Yeah. And speaking of stat padding, so I wanted to talk about Giannis Antetokounmpo a little bit. Oh. A little bit surprised to see him down at 5th in odds at plus 1,000. I still, frankly, to be honest, if I had to make this list, I would put Giannis at 3rd still. Luka has a very good case, by the way. So I guess Luka deserves to be in there as well. To rip off his stats on the year, he's averaging 32.9 points, 9.1 assists, and 8.4 rebounds. I am buying into a little bit of Luka, that is, yes. That's pretty impressive numbers. Yeah. And Kyrie's been hurt. He's kind of keeping that team afloat. And the Mavericks have been legitimately good this year. That I am buying a little bit what the Mavs are selling. Kyrie hurt right now, and Derek Lively hurt right now, who has been absolutely phenomenal on that team. He's a winning player, dude. I'm a big Derek Lively fan, so I do like that Mavs team. But I did want to bring up Giannis. I'm curious, like, when you get in these conversations, I still think ultimately, even with these Luka numbers, and if the Mavs stay in it, I think he'll stay in the conversation. But I think like the full best player in the world title, which is slightly different than the MVP race, I think is still between the Nikola Jokic, Joel Embiid, and Giannis. And you touched on value and talked about Embiid kind of navigating situations. The reason that I hold Embiid in different light than those two is in both situations with Giannis and Jokic, like they came into a stable franchise. There was a situation, a growth path for them, and they just fully capitalized on that. Both those guys deserve that credit. Giannis specifically is night and day as far as what he's done to his body, what he's done to his game and growing. Still doesn't have a bag or a dribble move or able to shoot much. So I guess maybe I'm taking it back a little bit. But the bottom line is he did transform himself into something that he wasn't coming to the league. When you look at Joel Embiid has been the stabilizing force in the Sixers organization. That he has outlived 3 different GMs. He's on his 3rd coach. He's had 150 teammates. He's had GMs tweeting about him from a burner account. That like he had every reason not to succeed and grow into this player. And to me, that makes it all the more impressive that he is. I'm not saying that means that he deserves to win MVP for a second consecutive year for it, but I do think that like there is a different way that you should look at him compared to these other guys. But I guess to swing it back to Giannis, I did want to get your opinion on the whole ball situation with the Pacers, how that all happened. So Giannis scores 64 points, sets a career high, breaks the Bucks franchise record, and really wanted that ball after the game. What was your vibe check on all of that?
I thought it was super lame,
Yep.
from him. I mean, I understand wanting the ball, and then to use his mom as an excuse for like, oh, I wanted to give it to my mom, like sign a jersey or do whatever, I just thought it was really pathetic in an early December basketball game against the Indiana Pacers to chase their players down the hallway and lose your mind over a basketball that and realistically you could just pick any basketball and sign it and write 64 and give it to whomever. But it's just so on brand for him. It just really is. I think that that's like kind of who he is. Maybe if like, I don't know. It's hard to like, if you're a Bucks fan, like, I don't know how you're really defending that. It's like same thing with the ladder thing. Like, sure, I'm sure he was pissed off because he missed a ton of free throws and lost the Bucks a game in Philadelphia, and then threw a hissy fit and threw a ladder when the people that are doing their jobs are just trying to do their jobs.
Montrezl Harrell's best moment in his Sixers career,
Yes.
by the way.
Yeah, agreed. And like for the way that he was yelling at Tyrese Halliburton and like putting his hand in his chest, like really rubbed me really rubbed me the wrong way. And I don't know, like you're a 2-time MVP, champion, Finals MVP. Like you should be better than that. Like you should have yourself to a higher standard. Like I would expect somebody with no career accomplishments to react that way when they have a big night like that. But in reality, like that should just be one of the things that I've done, right? And like again, it was the middle of December. I know the Pacers and Bucks have a little thing going on, which I love, by the way. I think it's great. I want more of that, and maybe this adds fuel to that fire. And if that's the case, great. It was good for the game, but just felt like really weird behavior from a guy that should hold himself above things like that. And I loved what Pat Bev said on his podcast.
Yes, sir.
I'd peel that bitch like an orange before he got his hands on it. I love that
thing. Yeah,
I love that. But really weird.
I do love that from Pat Bev, absolutely. And I would have loved nothing more than like a Pacers player to have walked out of that locker room with just like the ball completely deflated. Like that would have been hilarious. And by the way, like I believe Pat Bev would have done that. Like I could absolutely see him doing that. But yeah, I'm pretty much out on Giannis as far as like this is a guy who his reputation, and he really was like one of the most likable players in the league for quite some time. And it feels like he's like completely fallen off that pedestal to me. That it feels like these are like regular actions of him overreacting, him doing things. And it's one thing to be competitive and another thing to like overstep. And now like for this situation specifically, for starters, I'm pretty pro pettiness all around in the situation. That I do love the beef between the two teams. And we understand the backstory from the in-season tournament and everything that goes along with it. I don't have any issue with Giannis stat padding. And yes, he was very clearly stat padding to get to those 64 points. He checked in. The Pacers did go on a little bit of a run to cut the deficit, but it was still a double-digit game when he checked back in with like 2 minutes left to go, and that ultimately got to that 64. I believe he left with 58 right before that. So he got 6 more points, including a dunk that was one of those that like, you know what you're doing. Like, you know that you're going for this, and I don't have an issue with you going for the franchise record. I also don't have an issue with the Pacers having a problem with you going for the franchise record because I would have felt disrespected in those shoes as well. So I'm cool with that. I'm cool with them taking the ball. And then for Giannis to kind of lash out on it, I get it. You want the ball. That's understandable. I do think the Oscar Tshiebwe stuff is pretty convenient. I guess I'll put it that way. And by the way, big Oscar, man, like you look at that guy's Instagram, it is nothing but youth groups and church retreats and like one of the nicest guys and has been. I followed him for Kentucky during his time at Kentucky for a little bit. So I hate him kind of being thrown into the mix. I love that the Pacers were about it. I'm in on this Pacers team. But I guess my overarching point in this is I think Giannis cannot be looked at as like the nice guy of the NBA in the way that he was for so long.
Yeah, I mean, we've been known this. And not to get into this conversation, but I do like to have this take. I do like to put it out there. I think that if any of the rings are fraudulent, it's that one. I think, and that goes for all the sports. Like, if any of them are, I think the year following where the years were short, like the NBA season was shortened, things were just like everything was weird, right? Regardless, I think Giannis has gotten a pass because he tells dumb jokes at press conferences and he does all these things, and I'm sure he is a good guy, right? I'm sure he is, but he's been incredibly annoying for like the last 6 years, in my opinion. I think that the Bucks are annoying. I think that Mike Budenholzer was super annoying. I don't know anything about Adrian Griffin, but he's annoying now too.
Basketball coach.
Yeah, I think he sucks. I think Giannis has like always been a complainer and like has gotten away with being like kind of vicious at times towards people and officials and other players and coaches, and like just because he's I don't know, just because he has a nice story, and they made a movie about him, that he can just get away with that shit. It bothers me because like Joel, not to say that they have similar upbringings, but not to compare the two, but Joel is in a entirely different boat in the way that he's perceived and the way that people go about talking about him, and the way that he's treated by the media and the general public. And that pisses me off because I actually think that Joel is a really good dude and he doesn't lash out that way and he doesn't do things like you would never see Joel do that kind of thing. And people just 2 days later forgot about it because it was Giannis, and that's just what he does. And then the next night he's beating the shit out of the Wizards and he's got his kids on the bench and oh, look how cute this is. That's bullshit in my opinion. But yeah, I didn't like it. Also, like we've gotten from reliable sources that the rookie getting the ball after their first basket is a legit thing. That happens all the time. So it wasn't like, and I'm sure that like maybe it was calculated. It could have been, but it is a real thing. And it's not like they just did that just to put a middle finger to Giannis.
Well, I think the asterisk I'll throw in there is because it wasn't his first bucket that he did score in the in-season tournament. And he had a free throw. He had a free throw. So he had 1 point.
Okay.
So in the books, I guess it officially is. To me, I felt like this was convenient. Maybe I agree that that's definitely a thing. It felt like it didn't quite apply to the moment is I guess my take on that.
Yeah, I guess that's fair. I did see that, and I knew was it a free throw in the in-season tournament and a bucket in that game, or vice versa? Because if it was his first bucket, then I think that that's totally valid.
I believe it's the opposite. I believe he had 1 point in that game. Yeah, I'm pretty sure on that.
Okay.
But yeah, and to your Embiid point there, can you imagine if Embiid did do that, man?
That's what I'm saying.
Can you imagine the reaction if Joel Embiid was sprinting through the back hallways, running into the opposing locker room, demanding that he gets a ball back? Like, we would never hear the end of that. Joel Embiid would never hear the end of that. So, yeah, very different management of every personality. The Giannis stuff, it feels a little bit to me like the KD arc. That remember when Kevin Durant first came in and he was the nicest guy in the world, giving speeches to his mom at the MVP podium, and everyone was all about like, this is such a nice guy. And then I like distinctly remember the Sports Illustrated like cover that it was just KD is not nice. And then then he was doing the burner accounts, and then he was cursing all the time and doing all this other stuff, just kind of like changing the image of him, which was weird. I feel like we're getting that from Giannis, but it's like less intentional. Like for Kevin Durant, it felt like this is like, I don't want to be regarded as the nice guy. Like I want to be a killer on the court. I want to be a guy that people were afraid of. For Giannis, I feel like it's like he had the front up and now it's like gradually eroding down of like, this is who I actually am. And I also get to a certain extent, like for guys that are so hyper competitive and need to be these elite athletes locked in mentally from start to finish, I get the edge that comes with that. And some of it's very correlated to being successful as an athlete. So however he's wired is the reason that he's so good at basketball. It's the same reason, like, I know I've made this comparison before, but when you look at the Ben Simmons and Giannis Antetokounmpo juxtaposed, They're the exact same height, and they play like miles different in size. And the thing that I do respect about Giannis from an on-court standpoint, doesn't matter how many times he misses, he can go to the free throw line, airball 2 in a row, and he's driving at you as hard as he possibly can that same possession. So, or that next possession. So Giannis is the way that he's wired, and sometimes it doesn't show off in the right way, is also the reason why he's grown into this elite NBA player. So I do have to acknowledge that as well. And my last quick side note here is when you talk about the fraud ring or the whatever you want to call it, Mickey Mouse run there, when you want to talk about like the butterfly effects moments in NBA history, just imagine if Kevin Durant's a size 9 shoe, man, and his toe is not on the line for that 3-point. That paves the way for the Nets to win a title, and then the whole Kyrie, James Harden, that whole era of basketball changes. We look at that super team differently. The Bucks might have to blow it up at that point. So that is definitely a pivotal moment in NBA history that ultimately led to the Bucks winning a championship. But I do think about that often, how different it would be if Kevin Durant's toe was not on the line for that 3-pointer.
Yeah. I think you can look back at a lot of playoff runs. I mean, maybe not like that minuscule, like that moment does change everything at the buzzer. That game ends rather than continues on and lose, obviously. And the comparison to KD and Giannis, like people hated KD for something he did, right? Like,
sure,
he made that move, and not to like dismiss your point at all. I agree. Like the arc is similar where it like gradually got there. I hated it because I loved KD so much. I was like, dude, you can't do that. Like you're Kevin Durant. Like you can't do that. Whereas Giannis, I just like, I don't think I enjoy him as a player. I don't think I enjoy his personality in those moments. I don't know him personally, so I obviously can't speak on that, but like I've never been like, oh man, I love Giannis. I love watching him play. I love the way he goes about his business. Like I've never been like that, where Kevin Durant was the opposite. And I don't know, man. It also, like, he plays for Milwaukee, the whole like sitting down at the Sixers half court during that season, and just like it feels like it's a lot of like that little stuff that he's always done. I don't know if you recall when he got fouled by Mike Dunleavy, or he thought he did, and then he full sprint down the court, and Mike Dunleavy, when he played for the Bulls, shot a 3, and he just fully ran through him. Yeah. Like that is who he's been since the beginning. Like, if we're being honest. And maybe it is like that portion of being locked in or aggressive as hell, and you got to respect that point of it. But no, not a Giannis fan. Haven't been for a while, and I want to play the Bucks in this. I want to play the Bucks in a playoff series, like, badly. Like, I want that to be the second round series for the Sixers. I want the Sixers to beat their ass in the second round. Like, I want it to be that. I want to send Giannis home. That would be better than this. Not better than the Celtics, but it'd be pretty damn good.
It's kind of crazy that we haven't really had that like heavyweight battle with the Bucks in the playoffs. Like it's just never lined up that way, and kind of surprising. So yeah, it does feel like they're due. But let's switch gears, get back to the Sixers specifically here. I did want to talk a little bit about that Bulls loss, and specifically for starters, that I had a firm eye. I think everyone did on the trade assets with Alex Caruso specifically. And I want to begin. I'm going to share my screen here with the box score, because there's a couple things that I did note in this one that I think were relevant. And for starters, it is these nights where you see the lack of firepower beyond the Joel Embiid and Tyrese Maxey. So when you look at this game, and this is the box score I have pulled up here, Joel Embiid with 40 points, 14 rebounds, and 6 assists, shot 15 of 28 from the field. Tyrese Maxey with 29 points, 8 assists, 5 rebounds, shot 9 of 23 from the field, 5 of 11 from 3. And then no other member of the Sixers scored more than 8 points in that matchup. So, James, I just want to get your initial thoughts on that based on, and by the way, it was our guy Paul Reed with 8 points. That was the third leading scorer on the Sixers there. But what goes through your mind when you see that Joel Embiid and Tyrese Maxey scored 69 combined points and nobody else on the team has over 8?
Not good. It's not a good thing. I would start there. Tobias, dude, I don't know what the conversation is that needs to be had about Tobias, but it feels like we need to have one. And I mean, you just can't have nights like that. And I think it's a testament to their defense, and they struggled at times against the Bulls, which is like super annoying. Like Kobe White went on like a 15-0 run by himself, and the Bulls went on like,
dude.
He's been really good. He's been really good. But the Bulls went on that run in the second quarter, and they just like never had the ability to get back in the game. Like no matter how hard they tried, they actually took a lead at one point, but just could never like really take control over the game after that. And that was it. Like they took that big lead, or they lost a lead, and the Bulls went ahead. But you need more out of Oubre. You need obviously more out of Tobias. And I don't really know where else to go from there. Like, honestly, you get a fairly decent game out of Tobias and you win.
Yeah,
A fairly
absolutely.
decent game out of Oubre and you win. And Oubre's still coming back, and he had a huge dunk, which I love. But like, just not enough from anybody. And I don't know if it's intentional that like Maxey and Embiid only get, or are the only ones that are like getting actions towards them, but this offense like is free flowing and guys just didn't make shots.
Yeah.
And sometimes every night it comes down to that, right? And that's why I was like feeling good about going into this Minnesota game. Is like they haven't had many games that have piled onto each other. When they have bad games, they normally come back and are a lot better shooting the basketball. Obviously, no Batum and maybe no Rocco / Marcus Morris tonight.
Morris is available, but
Rocco's
uncertain on the other two. Batum officially out. Rocco still up in the air. Morris is available at the time we are recording this. Little after 6 at this point. We should get that full announcement after.
Yeah,
But
but yeah, I mean the conversation has to be Tobias.
Yeah,
for better or for worse.
Yeah, and let me dive fully into the Tobias Harris conversation here. Let me first juxtapose this with Kelly Oubre. You mentioned Kelly Oubre, not a great game. Agreed, for sure. He shot 2 for 10 from the field, finished with 6 points. What I will say is I can absolutely live with a guy like Kelly Oubre taking the right shot, still being aggressive, shooting 2 for 10, and those 2 baskets that he made were both huge baskets. It was the dunk, as you referenced, which was a pretty just a nice cut to the basket, got the ball in a nice high athletic dunk in a way that was good to see. Yeah, Paul Reed pass. Look at that. And then the 3-pointer, this was with a little over 2 minutes left in the game. It was a full court pass from Joel to Oubre in the corner, who was ice cold at this point. Still took the shot, drained the 3, and cut the lead to 4 points at that point in time with a little over 2 minutes left to play. That was a huge shot. That it's a completely different story being down 7 and being down 4 with 2 minutes left in the game. So hats off to Oubre for shooting his way through it. Obviously, I want more shots to go in, but I had no problem with Oubre's game because I still thought he took the right shots, did his thing. Now, Tobias Harris, 3 points in 32 minutes, straight up unacceptable. What's even more unacceptable to me is 3 shot attempts in 32 minutes. What are you doing out there? What is fulfilling the rest of your time on the court? And this is what struck me the most about there being an issue with Tobias Harris is this stat right here. Tobias Harris has shot fewer than 10 field goal attempts in 5 of his last 7 games. He only attempted fewer than 10 shots once in the first 19 games of the season. And that was the very first game of the season. And on top of that, Tobias has only attempted more than 3 three-point attempts once in the past 9 games. That just does not cut it. And I get it. I know all the good guy stuff. I know all the finding his role, whatever. There's no reason why you shouldn't be seeking out your own shot. That was a night where the Sixers desperately needed someone to cook a little bit, to go create their own shots. That's why Tobias Harris is here. That these are the opportunities that you should be stepping up in. And I think that we've kind of fully hit that wall of being frustrated to Tobias Harris is fully incapable of getting more put on his plate when this team needs to. He is what he is, and he's no longer this guy that's sacrificing his role or what the team needs. This is what he's capable of. 3 points in 32 minutes just straight up can never happen again.
Yeah, I don't even know what to make of that one. Is he really getting eaten up by Pat Williams like that bad? He's a good defender.
Should not be.
He should not be. Pat Williams is a good defender, but he should not be eaten up like that. And it really comes down to the thought process of can you win a championship with Tobias Harris being your third best offensive player?
Oh no, that ship's long gone.
Yeah. And you got to wonder now, in the NBA, expiring contracts are as good as gold, right? Yeah. I don't think you have to attach anything to him to get rid of him, to be completely honest with you. I think that there is a way out there to have moved on from Tobias at this point. What is it about him that's keeping him around? Are they waiting for it to be a salary match situation? Are they waiting for him to get better? I really I don't. That was
naturally hit his prime at the age of 31.
That wasn't really meant to be a joke, but it came out that way. But I don't know. I don't know what the deal is with him. Because at his best, right? When Tobias is playing his best in this offense and this team, he's giving you 16 to 18 a night, right? Like,
Yeah.
is that good enough? Like, is that like, it's not. Especially now when you have like switchable wings that play defense and
Right.
space the floor and are willing shooters that'll take contested shots, that'll drive to the basket and actually put up, but like get to the rim when it's not a fast break, and they'll fucking dunk. Like, there's multiple guys on this team that kind of filled the roles that he's supposed to be doing. And I just don't know I don't know what he's good at. I don't know what his defining skill is. I don't know where it comes from. And maybe like, I'm sure that it's nice to have the consistency, right? Like, we've talked about that a ton, but Morey is extended through the next 4 years. Nick Nurse is here for, the foreseeable future. Joel Embiid has the contract that he needs, and Tyrese Maxey is going to be around. Like, boom, there's your core, there's your conglomerates. It's okay to let go of this. It feels like we've just been handcuffed to this guy for so long. It feels like he's been a Sixer for so long. I saw somebody post to end it out here. Sorry, I've been ranting, but they went back and found the tweet from Bleacher Report that was like 76ers trade for forward Tobias Harris, and then they posted the clip from Interstellar of McConaughey's like, "No, don't do it, Murph. Don't do it, Murph." And I was just dying laughing at that, because it is like, damn, dude, like 20 or what was that, 2018, 2019? Like, geez Louise, man, how has it been that long?
And by the way, I would be remiss if I did not mention the day after him scoring 3 points in 32 minutes that the Sixers social media is posting why he should be voted for an All-Star game, that get them in the race to Indy with pictures of Joel Embiid, Tyrese Maxey, and Tobias Harris there. Come on, man. Have some self-respect. And by the way, you're just teeing it up for this guy to get shredded on social media. And that's exactly what happened, as most would expect. But yeah, it is frustrating. And to your point about kind of the tradable contract, 2 points here. Number one is I still think the Sixers are keeping it close to the vest, is they're valuable to other teams because they're valuable to the Sixers. That they want to get this off the books this summer too. That if you can get $40 million off the books just by letting his contract expire and then just outright signing a player who likely will be better than Tobias Harris, or better for this team, I should say, that's a win. So I think that's very much in Daryl Morey's mind. And the other part is we still got to address, like, the grass is not always greener. Like, who is he ultimately traded for? I did want to circle back this conversation to the Bulls a little bit because I was pretty locked in on that game. And Alex Caruso was a guy I know we've talked about on here before. He did pop to me a little more than I expect him to. And in that game specifically, as always, box score is not something that does Alex Caruso his true justice. But in 31 minutes, added 10 points, 4 assists, 4 rebounds, 2 blocks, and a steal, shot 5 for 8 from the field. You felt when Alex Caruso was on the floor, I thought he notably bothered Maxey as a perimeter defender. He really pops laterally, the way he can move back and forth to stay in front of guys. Like, he is very much in that conversation for the best perimeter defender in the NBA, like, period. Like, I do think he's that good of a defender. I still question, like, that has to be the move. I think, like, it's going to require 2 first-round picks to get Alex Caruso. I do think he's going to make plays that straight up win a playoff series, and that kind of is pushing me towards going out and getting him, that I think it could potentially be worth it. But then that's also, like, you do have finite assets here that you don't want to waste it on this. So I guess after that game and having a little more concrete data for what the Sixers team is, I want to get a vibe check on Alex Caruso for you again.
Yeah, he made me feel right. I think that I was validated in watching Alex Caruso play against the Sixers the other night, because I think he'd be great here. I think that he would be absolutely awesome. Everything that you saw from him. I mean, I think the one big thing is I just wish he was a more willing shooter. Like, I wish he was getting more shots up from deep, because he's a good percentage wise, but he just doesn't take a lot of them, which we're just talking about how frustrating that can be on this team, especially with the current offensive situation, dude. But like, when you talk about a guy that every single night is going to go out there, pick up the best ball handler on the other team, and just piss them off the entire time and make winning plays and smart cuts and chase down blocks and fast break layups and ones, and a great free throw shooter, a guy that can handle the rock, make good passes, set other teammates up, but also not go unnoticed when he doesn't have the ball. Like, I think that they're in this weird spot where it's like, we have these assets, they're going to grow, and we can make this big move. And like, you may want another star, right? That's probably what people are eyeing. And I don't disagree with that.
Yeah.
But if you find yourself in a situation this year where it's like, hey, we only have we can all look at the rest of the league and be like, oh, I'd want him. He might cost 3 picks, and I want him. Like, it takes 2 to tango. Other teams have to not only want to trade their players, but also be willing to trade them to the Sixers for what they have. And it's really difficult to do. The Bulls, obviously, I don't know what they're doing. I don't know what their plan is at all.
Neither do they. Yeah.
I think you're right. I don't think they do either. Dude, Caruso, like you said, like, how much is a guy worth if you can confidently say, after watching him for one singular game, if you can confidently say he's a guy that's going to win you a playoff game, that might swing a series. Like,
yeah,
if that's how you feel, if that's how we feel after watching him for one game, damn, dude, like, I mean, you might have to overpay for him, but God forbid somebody else that's your direct competitor overpays for him, because then we're in hell.
Yeah,
you know what
that's
I
the
mean?
fear. Mm-hmm.
And I don't know. And he doesn't make a lot. And even if that's your move, quote unquote, and you want to protect that, the idea and the light at the end of the tunnel that is your cap space that we keep talking about, boom, go get OG Anunoby in the summer instead of having to trade your 3 picks for him. And then it's like, holy shit, this is the best defensive team in the league. And they got 3 primary scorers and they got floor spacers. Like, whoa, we just flipped the entire script. But I mean, I'm not saying that they should go out and spend 2 first-round picks to get Alex Caruso. I'm not saying that necessarily, but I'm saying if he ended up on the Sixers, I might not even look at the price tag, because I'm just happy we have him.
Yeah. So a couple, I guess, to walk it back a little on my comments here. So one of my arguments, and I've been pretty anti-Caruso, is I wasn't confident. I'm still not confident. What is the gap between Alex Caruso and DeAnthony Melton? Because I do think they're somewhat similar players.
Yeah.
I'll start with saying I think the defensive gap is bigger than I expected. That really popped to me from Caruso. And I do check in on Caruso from time to time. I've seen a couple Bulls games this year beyond just them against the Sixers. Not a team that is in my frequent watching, just, NBA League Pass channel surfing. Bulls not quite at the top of my list this year, but still have checked in from time to time. So I think the defense, there's a more notable gap between him and Melton. I do think Melton's a better shooter. I think Melton, I guess it would be pretty equal as playmakers, I would say. I do think Melton's better than advertised and has grown of late in that. Yeah. Caruso, for sure, a better finisher. No doubts about that one. But I guess my overall conversation is, James, how many deep do you think the Sixers rotate in the playoffs? 8?
8. Yeah, I think that's 8 probably max.
So what's your 8 right now on this Sixers team? So there's Embiid, obviously, Maxey, obviously, Tobias Harris, unfortunately, Nicholas Batum, obviously, Kelly Oubre, obviously, DeAnthony Melton, obviously. That's 6 right there. Paul Reed, and then who's your 8th, would you say?
I'm sorry. So you went like no. You have Maxey, Melton, Batum, Harris, Embiid. Yeah, I guess Oubre, Paul Reed, Rocco.
So no Pat Bev?
Pat Bev, like maybe. I guess so. I mean, I guess if that's you're putting it at 8, yeah.
So I guess the point I'm getting at here is like so Caruso plays for sure, but then you got to bump guys from that. Then you got to figure out like I think there's a very strong argument to be made that the better trade for the sake of this team is combining like 3 of these guys into the one like star level player, and then the rotation kind of flows a little easier. Like even on a night by night basis, the Sixers are going 10, 11 deep, which that's a lot at the NBA, man. That's a lot to rotate, and something that I frankly just don't think you can really do in the postseason come NBA. And I do think like I've spoken already about my issue with you shouldn't be committed to playing Tobias Harris 35 minutes every single night. You just don't have to. Like, I promise you, it's not in the contract. He's going to make he's going to make the same amount of money regardless. Let's make this team a little better and eat into that. Give Oubre some extra minutes, give Batum some extra minutes. Let's see what Robert Covington can do. He has not gotten the chance that I would like from him. Covington's a guy that I would very much like to be in this rotation. And I don't think he's a Nick Nurse guy. I would like to find a way to make that happen. And honestly, like it's not even a dig at Covington. I think he's looked good when he's played this year. I think he's done what I've hoped to see from him every time I've seen him in there. It feels like Nick Nurse doesn't like him. But I guess my overarching point, like if you're trading for Caruso, who essentially is another rotation player while he's a good one, like that doesn't bring the offensive firepower that I still think this team's lacking. And I'm not sure if like it changes the overall trajectory of this team in a way that like the trade I think they're holding out for would.
Yeah, and I don't disagree with that at all. And I think that's the crossroads that they're at right now, is like you're definitely overpaying, or at least paying like market value for a guy like Alex Caruso, which is high right now. And he also is limited in what he does. But I think when you talk about how important the little things are in a playoff series, like just think about a guy like Derek White, dude. He literally won playoff games for the Celtics last year, and like you do anything to have that guy playing the two for you right now. Like
Best player on the Celtics.
I don't know if I'd go that far, but definitely something that somebody might say. And like Caruso is like he's that type of player. He's never like he's always on, always on. And the Sixers have just been dying for a guy that's like that on both ends of the floor. Like you've always had like Maxi's always on offense, but he's been spending the time to get better as a defender. And obviously he dealt with Harden and all his bullshit. And like everyone else is like Tobias, like is going to take 3 shots, and it's like what the hell else is he even doing? And I don't disagree with any of the points you made. I actually agree with a lot of them. But if you do go like say you get Caruso and you don't have to give up any of those top 7 players, and you just add him to be that 8th wherever he may fall in the minutes rotation, you now have a guard rotation of Maxey, Caruso, and Melton, where Caruso and Melton can actually play together. I don't know if you'd go 3 guards, but damn, that defense would be really, really good.
Yeah.
And that's really important. I know like offense, obviously, but like you already you have two offensive juggernauts right now. Like you have the best scorer maybe ever. Like you have one of the best scorers in the last decade of basketball. You have Tyrese Maxey, who's averaging, I don't even know right now, but scoring 30 left and right, no problems about it. And like you add a guy like Caruso in, who I think isn't like, he's not an offensive, he doesn't necessarily like prop up an offense, but he's a connector.
Sure.
He does all the right things. And again, I feels like I'm rallying for Alex Caruso right now. And I don't think that's necessarily the case, but I think that like, if it's not a star, right? If you're not doing that this year, Alex Caruso would make you pretty damn good. And then if you go down that line, it's Maxey, Caruso, Batum, Harris, Embiid, Melton, Oubre, Reed off the bench. That's a really, really, really strong 8 that all can do everything on the court. And that's all we've been asking for the last 4 years. So I would love it. That's all I can say.
Yeah, I mean, I see both sides more than I did. I would guess a week ago that I do see the appeal. I do see the argument. Another last point that I just want to wrap up, the last thing here. So we've talked a lot about Zach LaVine. We've talked a lot about Alex Caruso. DeMar DeRozan, I think there's a chance that he could be sick on the Sixers team. Like for way cheaper than either one of those guys. He's on an expiring contract as well, making $28 million this year. DeRozan's a mid-range killer. He operates in a ton of the same spots as Tobias. That if we're talking about making a Tobias Harris like swap, like DeRozan to me is he's more good than Tobias Harris and less bad. Like he is a guy that if you make the trade, it's not going to be one that you got to empty all your assets for. That I think he's the cheapest out of the 3. You can add him to this roster. You're not going to have the same commitment of like, we have to get you all the shots. Like his role will be understood here, or at least that should be made clear to him. DeRozan, if that's a buy low target and the price tag's not much, I would absolutely kick the tires on that.
Yeah, his passing really impressed me in this game. Like as kind of a secondary ball handler, he made some really nice passes to Vucevic and some cutters off of his drives, and I think that's something that he's grown into more recently. He definitely didn't have that early in his career. And that last possession pissed me off. That is not a foul on Tobias, and he gets that call because that's the area he operates. He's very savvy. But I agree with you. Like if it's a Tobias for DeRozan swap, like definitely makes sense. It's an upgrade. DeRozan is not a great defender from what I'm gathering. And that would be like if he's playing your 3 or 4, kind of sucks to like for that guy to not be a good defender just because of how many great wings you'll be playing, throughout a potential playoff run. But definitely something you can work out, right? I feel like you can always figure that out to some level. But yeah, he impressed me. Like I'm in the boat of like, if you're going to do a deal with the Bulls, get 2 of the 3, like find out a way to get them both. Then like the price tag of like, okay, we're paying 2 first-round picks and whatever else you might have to add in to make that work for both sides. I'm in on trying to get a little bit more than just Caruso. It makes that feel a little bit better. You know what I mean? And then with DeRozan, he's expiring as well, right?
Yep. Yeah, he
So
is.
you still maintain that cap space going into the summer, with a playoff run hopefully under everyone's belt. And he's a
Very
guy
nice.
that like his offense translates to the playoffs. Like things tighten
Yes.
up. DeMar DeRozan's a tough bucket getter. And down the stretch of a game, also a guy that can create and take tough shots when things get tough.
That was going to be my next point. Is I do feel like that's a box that's unchecked on this team. Is we know what Embiid can do, obviously, but there are some inherent just struggles with a big man getting his shot in certain situations, especially in a playoff setting. Embiid is certainly well aware of that at this point. Maxey is like taking his leap forward and has some isolation ability, but he's not like a tough bucket getter to the extent where you have to be in the playoffs, at least right now. DeMar DeRozan is. Like, I very much think there's like a section of the shot clock that DeRozan can just go out and get to this mid-range spot and get a bucket that, like, I can visualize him hitting big shots in the postseason with a Sixers uniform on.
Yeah.
And by the way, like, let's not forget when he first came to the Bulls, which was 2 years ago. I know he was such short-term memory when like covering the NBA, but he was like an MVP candidate. He was in that conversation to start out. He averaged 27.9 points per game with the Bulls his first year. Now, once again, that was 2 seasons ago. This year, he's shooting or averaging 22.2 points per game this year. I that's something that I think hasn't got enough like legitimate conversation. And if DeRozan's like not an expensive deal whatsoever, I think I would absolutely jump on that from the Sixers perspective.
Yeah, it's tough because I do wonder what, like, with his limitations, like if it hurts in certain moments. Like obviously the mid-range scoring is great, but he's going to need more of a market share of the Sixers offense to like be effective in that way. The defensive inefficiencies are worrisome at times, but like you said, I think the undeniable fact about DeMar DeRozan is like he's a scorer. He is elite in that way. And the Sixers haven't had like that complementary offense.
He was an all-star last year.
Yeah.
Like he's still, I think,
Yeah.
got it. Like,
Yeah.
and I feel way better when you're kind of spacing out these rotations and lineups when you can have 2 of the 4 of, like, when we're talking about generating offense, Joel Embiid, Tyrese Maxey, Kelly Oubre, and DeMar DeRozan. I feel a lot better about that 4 than I do with Tobias Harris over DeRozan as kind of your key pieces there.
Yeah. I also think like you can get, it gives you like a lot more, like there's just more juice there, than what you have with Tobias. And like if you have it, like even with Oubre, like I think that he's going to find himself getting more minutes as the year goes on. He kind of gets back into the swing of things, but like adding Oubre into any of these lineups just gives you just a little bit more sauce. Just like all around, just like ball handling, athleticism up and down, vertically, horizontally, just the whole thing. Where Tobias is just like slow. Oh, like just gentle, like he's just way too gentle on the shit that he does. It's just all like I don't know. And DeRozan is going to be in that, like he's going to operate in this similar capacity, but he just does it with a little bit more ferocity. And
he's a killer.
He's a killer. He is a killer. He's an assassin scorer.
Yeah, I do love nice little callback on that one, but yeah, I've warmed up to that conversation. We are gonna have plenty more of the trade talks here. It is getting to that time of year that for a lot of people this is the swing of things. Yeah, January 15th, we got a whole new slew of players becoming available, so I think things will fully heat up during that time. But James, appreciate you for hopping on with me today. We're gonna get over and watch this Timberwolves game, and we'll be back with another episode next week. Hopefully things go well. I'm sure you guys can let us know in the comments about that game and sound off if we missed anything notable. I'll be back in action, dropping something if that is the case. But appreciate everyone for tuning in. Make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and we will talk next time right here on the Pick Swap Podcast.